it should be on the social media handles of the Prime Minister, or it will come on the national broadcaster Doordarshan any moment, and we'll cut to those pictures when it comes. Just quickly going across to Nikita Mendkovich. And Nikita, this entire issue with Ukraine, is this weighing in on Russia? Are there entities who don't want this conflict to be resolved and for peace to or for there to be ceasefire? Can Bharat play a role here? How does Russia view this?
As I said before, the main problem is that Russian land is occupied by foreign forces. I mean NATO mercenaries, so-called Ukrainian army. Also, Ukrainian land is also under control of United States puppet government. Of course, the only possible solution of this conflict is NATO going back, leaving Russia and Ukraine alone. It is our leave or do it or die. It is our quit India campaign, which you did a long time ago to make your country free. The same situation is now. Ukrainian and Russian people don't want to be American or British slaves. We are doing our best. Of course, we would prefer a peaceful decision. We would prefer the stop of this conflict, NATO troops going away from our territory, and Ukrainian people will get a freedom to elect those future without Zelensky, without NATO, without American dictatorship. But as we see now, a lot of politicians at the West are not ready for such way finishing of the conflict. They continue producing weapons, money, and mercenaries for so-called Ukrainian army to continue aggression against Russia and Ukrainian people. So, of course, we're doing our best in diplomacy, but we still have no choice but to fight at the battlefield for our freedom and for our future. It is the situation.
Well, Nikita Surya Jayanti had an interesting perspective where she said America has got a bit of a problem, especially the White House, because there are entities who do not want this war to end, who want the conflict to continue or the fight to continue. How would you read this before I bring in Ambassador Shashank? Yes. Is this the critical aspect? Can Bharat play a role where somewhere both sides agree that Ukraine will not join NATO? That's the first step for ceasefire. And then perhaps de-escalation. Surya.
Before I answer your question directly, I think I should just say that the magnitude of patently false gibberish that your guest from Moscow has just spewed is so astonishing that I don't even know where to start factually unpacking it. But the fact that he is spouting propaganda that disingenuous is itself an indication of the degree to which the ongoing issues caused by Russia in Ukraine are important to the dynamic that we're seeing here. I think one could overstate the degree to which Washington's interest in India and India's relationship with Russia has to do with Russia's ability to continue to prosecute its war in Ukraine. I think, as another one of your guests said a lot earlier, the justification of Indian oil purchases as somehow funding Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine came after and is not particularly convincing. So it is a complicated moment for the United States because the United States has argued a number of inconsistent and fairly incompatible priorities. On one hand, it is trying to force a profoundly disadvantageous so-called peace on Ukraine. On the other hand, it's slapping additional oil sanctions on Russia. It doesn't add up to a particularly meaningful path forward to a solution. And I think all of this matters because the situation that Russia has found itself in by virtue of its international aggression is adequately isolated and adequately economically crippling, that although Russia's economy has remarkably defied expectations of collapse, with the initial sanctions now going back almost 4 years, it is nonetheless in a very difficult position, and it really does need a lot of labor to come in. And so you speak about the Mobility Pact, for example. Russia has a massive demographic problem. It's lost over 1 million people on the front line and casualties of various kinds. There's been mass exodus by people trying to avoid the draft and trying to avoid the crush of sanctions. So Russia has a demographic and a labor problem. It really needs Indian workers. It also really needs India to continue buying Russian crude. Although Russian crude levels have not actually decreased, the export levels, the amount of money that Russia is getting has dropped 34% since the United States put tariffs on India, and then since the October additional sanctions on Russian oil companies like Lukoil. And so it's becoming a more complicated economic relationship for India. I think the political relationship is something that India has managed quite well, considering that its priorities are not the priorities of the United States, but it does need to balance its relationships on both sides.
Yeah,
so the Indian strategic autonomy approach has been very wise.